talk with our neighbor outside?
Kentucky's Justice and Public Safety Cabinet graduates hundreds of officers a year. Police officers train for 27 weeks. Impressive.
Oh!
Got knife.
You aren't watching their training, though.
Drop the knife.
These men and women are probation and parole officers, training to be the bridge between incarceration and freedom. Now, want to hear something scary? By the end of these officers' first year, odds are about a third of them will quit.
That presents a danger to public safety. That makes it more difficult for the offenders and more difficult for the officers.
How do we fix it?
Pay is one thing that we're definitely fixing.
Let's get two of you guys.
The starting salary for a probation and parole officer is $31,000.
Which is a good 10 grand below police on average.
Whatever he does, you just respond, okay?
But if you think about it, probation and parole officers only train for a quarter of the time the police do. Their arresting powers are more limited.
Probation, parole.
So maybe $30,000 a year isn't that bad. But there's a saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Most of the time we don't give them a heads up that we're coming.
We spent 3 days with probation and parole officer Josh King. He's considered an experienced officer at 5 years in.
Just swung by to check up on you, man, real quick. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
We went on home visits.
It's just you that lives here, right?
That's it.
You're coming off diversion another couple days or so?
Yeah, 21st, I think.
That's awesome, man.
Others have a ways to go.
There he is.
That's the way I looked last time I was on TV.
Steve spent some time in prison and is now spending the rest of his 23-year sentence out on parole. He and Josh have had their ups and downs.
Oh, that's good when I'm not high. When I'm high is when it goes bad. They don't like me so much.
And you don't like us so much, right?
Definitely don't like y'all so much.
How important is a relationship like that for you?
I think he's the one that says whether I go back to jail or not, you know. So if our relationship's good and I know what he expects of me.
The next day, perfecting what they all hope to never do.
We're going to do 50 rounds.
Fire!
Never know when they might have to.
Holster an empty weapon.
Sounds good.
Same day as qualifying, same Josh,
William Despain.
different look, different character.
Sorry to hear that, man. Did your grandfather know you were in the program? Was he proud of you for sticking with it?
This time, a counselor during an office visit. Josh is one of 644 probation and parole officers across the state, supervising 47,000 people. That's 73 to 1.
I would be lying if I told you that you can know every single detail about these folks. You just have to do the best you can do.
There are no 2 days that are the same.
When Director of Probation and Parole Jonathan Hall took over last year, he says Josh's Lexington Probation and Parole Office had a 50% turnover rate.
That means half of the officers working there hadn't even been with us for a year.
And that's scary to the community, right?
It is. You know, one of the things I always say is that it takes over a year for somebody to really learn the job of a probation and parole officer because there are so many details and so many different roles they play.
How frustrating is it to have officers leave after less than a year?
Very. Every time you get an officer that leaves, a new officer has to come in and learn everything about 100 different people. That's a daunting task.
What we learned in just 3 days is this job demands a lot. You have to be physically and mentally tough. But the overwhelming demand is more personal.
How old is she?
2 months.
Can't believe you're a granddad, though.
Me neither. It is, though.
A surprise to you, too?
Yeah.
It's a challenge to put a price on passion. All that can go by is reality.
Make that space greater so that you're safer.
And that's an overflowing number of people incarcerated that are coming out soon to meet people like Josh. But will officers like Josh even be there?
I heard that, man. Nothing wrong with that. All right, man.